Now, am I right in assuming you can hear me okay, number one, and number two, you can see the email I sent out a couple minutes ago? Clayton, is that correct?
Wait, say that again, Mr. Scott.
I just want to make sure that A, you can hear me okay, and it sounds
Yeah.
like you can, and B, that you see on your screen right now the email I sent out a little bit earlier.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hello, John. I'm just starting right now. Okay. So as it says, we're going to continue to go over the node stuff we started to go through yesterday. Now, one of the things that was asked of me yesterday was when we went in, I'm going to have to change my share here, but when we were in on Visual Studio, which is where I want to get to right now. All right. I've changed this around just a little bit because it works better this way. Yesterday we had there, if it was an error to do a res.send, really that doesn't make a lot of sense right there. So I've changed it that if for some reason the file doesn't exist, it does a file not found. Now, I've also gone through here and I put in a file name that doesn't exist because remember this was called index.html. So you'll see that when I run this, hopefully if you look at my terminal at the bottom of the screen here, you can see it did come up with 404 file not found. All right. And that's actually the way it's oftentimes done because this will not only return, but it'll return and it'll send a message to the console. And this could be anything we wanted it to be. I just made that up. So again, this will give you the 404 not found. And just to prove it, I'm going to run it again. So let me clear and let me run it again. And it does come up here and it looks okay. Server now running. It's not until we actually go in and attempt to read that file, which does not exist, that we should get the error down here. So you can see that right now on the screen, it says server now running on port 5555. But if I go out, you don't have to see this. I'm just going to go out to the internet. I'm going to type in localhost : 5555 and hit enter. Nothing is going to happen on here. However, I see my 404, I guess I hit it twice, file not found. So just so you know, like I said, what I wanted to show you for completeness sake, and I'll leave that up there for a second, is that's a better way of handling it than the way we handled it before. But the question got asked to me yesterday, could you show us how that error could happen? Well, again, the error could happen where either A, the file doesn't exist, or B, you give it a path and it's the wrong path, or C, for some reason you don't have access to that file. It could be any of those, which could technically result in a 404 error. But changing that back again, you can see hopefully here, it restarted the server. But when I come back in and do a file save, and then again, if I go back to the internet again and refresh, it has my homepage on it. Even if you can't see that, it's no biggie. It did work. All right. So that was the first thing, at least for a little bit of completeness, that I wanted to go over with you right there. All right. So that was the first one. So I'm going to continue on unless there are any questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file save. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to close this folder. All right. And I'm going to do a file and an open folder. All right. But I'm going to create a brand new one. So I created this one called Simple Server 1. I'm going to create another one that's called Simple Server 2 right now. So Simple Server 2. Even if you can't see it, I just created it on my desktop. All right. And of course, this path does not exist. Let me try it from here. Now I should be able to open the folder at least. And there is Simple Server 2. And there's nothing in it right now, and that's okay. All right, so it's an empty folder, but I'm going to start putting stuff in it right now. But before we do, just to kind of, I don't know, for lack of better words, trying to be complete here, there's really two major reasons that we need a server for this class. All right. And one of them is for communication. And it basically communication slash accessibility, for lack of better words. What we want to be able to do is let users access our app. Now, with what we've done so far, and you both know this, they can't, because this stuff is only existing on our machine. All right. Now, that said, and I think I mentioned this last week, but I don't remember if I did or not. What I have done in the past, in the last few years, is when we get to this point where we start to take our project and actually save it out to the internet someplace. If it's a Node project, I had been using Heroku. However, Heroku is getting rid of their free tier. They claim that later this month they're going to be introducing a new educational tier, but I don't know when that'll be. So I'm looking, and I've next week I will have an alternative to this, and that's for our back end and for our database. So when we get into where we're totally doing MERN stuff, the idea is we will have our Node stuff and our MongoDB stuff will be on this new thing. All right, Heroku Plus or whatever it is. And for our front end stuff, which is going to be the React, we'll probably use something like Netlify in order to house that. And if you say, I don't get that, you don't have to yet. All right, we're just getting to where we're starting to get comfortable, hopefully, with this stuff. All right, so one is communication, and the other one is you need a trusted environment. And what I mean by that is if you were able to literally put stuff on your server and have other people, I don't mean your server, if you put stuff on your machine and you could do that where other people could access it, at least potentially, if they were able to get in as you, all right, or figure out your password or whatever, they could do a lot of damage or a lot of potential damage. All right. So we want a trusted environment for our application's code. So the server is going to hold code that cannot be manipulated by an end user. Now, we talked about this back in AWD1111, that, when we got into and we were talking about forms, we talked about some of the built-in stuff that HTML5 has for form validation, things like the word required. All right. Placeholders, which aren't really validation, but are designed to help. And there's other things, even setting a type up, like to number or tell or whatever. All right. So we did that. And then we got into using either JavaScript or jQuery or a combination thereof. We got into where we talked about how you would validate what the user put in. All right. And you saw some of this on that form validation thing that I had you do last week. All right. The one we went over as a class. Well, the idea is all of that validation, all of it is being done on the client. All right. And for it to be successful, first of all, it has to be written correctly. And second of all, the user cannot disable JavaScript on his or her browser. But sometimes people do disable it, and sometimes people figure out how to do stuff they're not supposed to do, either purposely or accidentally. But what I'm getting to then is when we go and we create our app, and we've got a form, let's say, and we want to submit something. And let's say that we're writing our own blog. All right. And what we have there is we got a form that comes up that asks us for a title for our blog, and it asks us for some content. We can put words in there, we can put pictures in there, it doesn't matter. All right. So we go in and we do all that stuff. All right. But then there's a button that says submit. When we click that submit button, there's at least a good chance that we will have some code that will run on the client side. We don't want to just send that stuff right to the database, because what if we had a field in there that asked for something numeric and we either left it blank or we put in something non-numeric? The program could blow up. Well, what I'm getting to and what I'm telling you here is even if all of your validation tests, even if they all pass on the client, once you send them out to the server, they're run again. All right, either the same tests or some like them, or even some maybe more harsh or critical or whatever, because you don't want to let bad information get into the database or wherever it is you're storing this information. All right, and hopefully what I just said is more review than anything else. And you're like, yeah, let's just go on. Okay, then we will. All right. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to bring down. So I'm going to go to view. You can either go to view terminal or you can go to terminal and choose new terminal. All right, we're going to do that. All right, I've got a new terminal up running here. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to do my npm init. But again, since this is just kind of a garbage one that we're doing right here, I'm going to put the -y in there. Remember that -y basically accepts all the defaults. So I'm going to say npm init -y. Once we do that, all right, it's going to come in here and it's going to set the package.json file up. All right, and there's nothing else in there. That's fine though. Okay, so we've got that done. Then next, for now at least, the only thing we're going to add is nodemon. So let's do an npm I -D nodemon. All right. And that'll, of course, install nodemon on our machine. So I've done so far, I did the npm init -y, and then I did the npm I -D nodemon. All right, I'm going to clear the screen. So right now I've got my node modules folder, I've got my package lock.json, and I've got my package.json. All right, and I'll make a file and I'll call it index.js. All right, we'll make some changes to it as we go, but that's fine. This is just the default name that you get. All right, but the first thing I do want to do is come in here and get rid of this line and replace it with what we've been doing here, and that is first we're going to say, let me get rid of all that. I'm going to say start, and I'm going to put in here node index.js, then a comma, and then dev start and nodemon index.js. And I'm sorry that at the beginning, I'm being very repetitive in a lot of ways, but just so you know, this is the one that's going to actually run our program when it's up on the internet. This is the one that'll run it on our machine, and we'll be using nodemon. Also, with both of these, it is not mandatory that you add the .js extension in either one. Some people do it, some people don't do it. I just got it in there. All right. And what you should notice now is I do have a development dependency, and that's nodemon. All right. So I'm going to come in here and do a file save, and I'm going to close this. All right. Now we're ready to come in and actually start writing the index.js file. So up here, I'm going to come in and I'm going to click the new file, and I'm going to put in here index.js. All right. And now we're going to, some of this at least is going to look similar to what we did yesterday, but I wanted to show you a couple things that I neglected to show you yesterday. So I'm going to start with const HTTP equals require HTTP. You already know I'm not going to put that comment in there again, but you should know that, again, that's going out to basically our nodejs.org documentation or the API that's out there, and it's grabbing the built-in module that's called HTTP. All right, we're also going to set up the server, and since this isn't going anywhere, you know, again, we could say process.env.port, or, and this time I just picked out 3210, but we're never going to put this anyplace, so I'm just going to put in here 3210. It never hurts to put that in, but in this case, there's not a whole heck of a lot that's doing. because unless we do plan on taking this and actually standing this thing up on the internet, there's really not a lot of reason to do that. All right. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create my server. So I'm going to say const server equals, and we're going to do the http .create server, which will have passed into it a request object and a response object. And, all I'm going to put in here is just a couple things. First, I'm going to do a console.log. And we could do this right, rather than doing it to the console, I could do a res.send on this, but I'm going to do it to the console. And I'm going to put in req.url. All right. And then I'm going to say res.end, and we'll just say something like, welcome to our website. Something like that. Okay. Now, you've heard some of this stuff before, but I want to say it again anyway. All right. I've got one more line to type in, which I will in a minute. But I'm hoping at least that you're both comfortable, or everybody in the class is comfortable with these two lines, that they just make sense to you by now. All right. This line again is attempting to come in and create the server. All right. Once the server is created, it should come back and do this. That's the callback function. Now, we could have written this in another way. I mentioned this earlier, the first week, but we could have put here function and then gotten rid of that arrow function that was there and done it like that. You notice that I have no errors in here, but that's considered the old school way of doing it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You'll see it all over the place, especially in more, in more legacy or older code. But today, it's what you're encouraged to do is to write it like this. And again, we can put that curly brace on the same line or on a new line. It doesn't matter. All I'm trying to show you is those two things do the same thing. All right. Okay. Finally, we're going to tell it to start. So server.listen on our port. And again, we're going to come in here and we're going to have another one of these callback functions. So once it starts running, we don't need request and response here, because all we want to do is basically say, and I'll put in backticks here, I'll say server up and running on port . All right. And what that should do, all right, is, I need a console log for it. Console.log, I apologize. So a console.log, but what that should do is it should print out in the console when the program's up and running, server up and running on port 3210. So looking at this whole thing from top to bottom, there's everything. But again, before we go on, it's starting to get to the point where it's important that you at least have an overall understanding of what's going on here. All right, we are literally creating three variables in these lines. One called HTTP, one called port, and one called server. All right, we are initializing HTTP to the stuff, right from Node itself. We're just giving the port a random port number, and we're initializing our server to tell it to create a server. And once it creates it, it should come back and show us the URL. All right. And then we should just get a message that says, welcome to our website. Finally, this is just what should appear in the console. If we put nothing in there, if we just put server.listen port, it would work. We don't have to do this. We do not have to do that. We could just put port, but then the cursor would just be sitting there flashing, all right, in our console window, our terminal window. But this way we're at least giving the user a message as far as what's going on. All right. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to do a file, save. I'm going to, again, I thought I had my terminal up and running, but maybe I didn't. So let me go back and view my terminal. And there it is. All right. So with all that up, I'm just going to type in npm run dev start, which basically is telling me to run what was in that dev start line that was in my packaged.json file. Okay. Now, just so you know, I'm going to hit enter in a minute, but I still could go and say either node index, or I could say node index.js, or I could say node mon index, or I could say node mon index.js. All right. But the recommended way is the way I showed you. To come up that dev start, there's nothing magical about it. You could have called it, run the program, watch, whatever you wanted to. But I call mine dev start. So I'm going to say npm run dev start. Now, when I hit enter, if this works, I should get this message right here. But it should, since the port is a variable, it should just put up server up and running on port 3210. And you'll notice if you look, if it's up, I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there it is. So my server now is up and it's running. Now that's one half of the equation, but now I've got to go out and you can do the same. All right, I don't want to keep changing my share here, but if you go out to and open up a browser window, and in that browser window, you just put in localhost 3210 and hit enter, you should get a message that says, welcome to our website. So please try that. And if for some reason it does not work, let me know. All right, since I'm not hearing anything, I'm taking for granted.
Yeah, mine did not work.
All right, what did it do?
It just came up as the site can't be reached.
All right, then let's go back and take a look at the code that we had here. All right. First of all, did you put that number in there? Is that number the same number?
Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
All right, so you've got the const HTTP, you've got everything that's shown here.
Yeah.
And you've got Node, I mean, it's up and running, right? You not only, you started that, you started up NodeMon, you made the changes in NodeMon to the ones that I showed you as well to your package.json file.
Yes. Let me try one more time. All right, there we go. I just forgot one of the parentheses.
Okay. All right. So we're there. In other words, we got the first one to work. Now, what you may or may not have realized, though, is if I come down here to my terminal, all right, I've now got this. It says server up and running, and underneath that, it's got a slash. And that is the line that we put right here, console.log request URL. So if I were to go back, even though I don't have this page, if I went back again onto my internet here and under my localhost 3210, if I put in there /about, for example, and I hit enter, what's on my screen will not change. It still says welcome to our website. But if I go back again here, you say, well, it's not showing you anything. Why? Because technically we didn't have that. But what we're going to do is we're going to add that in just a second. All right? Because, again, we're not going to go to the extreme we went to yesterday with going in. We're going to basically kind of just use a res.end statement, and we're going to act as though we have 3 different pages. We're going to act as though we have a home page, as though we have an about page, and as though we have a contact page. We could take the time to go in there and just create, 3 bogus pages. There's no reason to do that. All right. So what I want to do then is I want us to come back to here, and hopefully you can see my Visual Studio window right now. All right. I'm hoping at least that you can. All right. But we're going to change this res.end line that's right here. And instead of having it say welcome to our website, I'm going to just change it to welcome to the homepage. You'll see why in just a moment. All right. Now, we can actually come in here and do the equivalent of a switch statement on this. So in other words, I want you to come down here and I want you to add the code that you're going to see me add right now. So under the line that says console.log req.url, we're going to do a switch on that. You know what a switch is and how a switch is used, etc. But we're going to say case slash, well, that's our homepage. So I'll put a comment over here that says homepage. All right. And if that's the case, then I want to take this welcome to our homepage line. And I want to put it right there. Okay. And break. Now we're not done yet. All right. Because we still, again, as I said, we're acting as though we have 3 different pages. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to get rid of this line that says res.end. And I'm going to copy these down because I'm too lazy to write it again. So I've got it in there 3 times now, 4 times. That's good. So here's the home page. This will be about, not a but, about, and that'll be our about page. This will be contact. And as you probably already guessed, that'll be our contact page. What I did 4 of them, I guess I only did do 3. So I've got 3 of these done now. All right, I've got my home one. I've got my about one. Oh, I did have another one here. No, I didn't. And so I've got home right there. I've got about right here, and I've got contact. All right. And I'm going to put in a default. And that'll be for any page that I request that I don't have. And again, I can put a 404 in there, but I'm just going to say for now, page cannot be found. And break. Now, my hope is, all right, my hope is that you're all familiar enough and remember enough JavaScript that what I just showed you right there, that makes sense. So what we should be able to do right now, this hasn't changed. This hasn't changed. We took that console.log line and moved it up, and then we did a switch statement. Now I'll leave that up there for a moment. So if you want to copy that, you can. It's not lining up very well, but I'll move that down a little bit. There. All right. So again, we're going to switch on that URL. If the URL that was returned was this, and you already saw that returned once, then it should say on the screen, welcome to the home page. If we add to that the word about, it should say welcome to the about page. And if we remove the word about and replace it with contact, it should say welcome to the contact page. And if we put anything else in there, for example, like hello, it should come back and say page not found. All right. Any questions on that? Does that totally make sense to both of you?
Yes.
All right. Okay, then let's go on. All right. We'll leave our server listen line in here. Okay. I'm going to do a file save. I'm going to move up my terminal. You'll notice it went and restarted a bunch of times. And you'll notice when I started doing that, I made a mistake. I had left a curly in there. So you can typically, when you're working on this stuff, some developers like to leave the console window open because it's a way to get a little cheap down and dirty kind of compiler basically on there. And other people don't like it because they just don't want to see this stuff basically on their screen all the time. And you know as well as I do, if you don't want to see it anymore, you just do a Control C down here if you want to stop the server. All right. All right, now let's start it up again. So I'm going to say again, npm run dev start and hit enter. My server is up and running on port 3210. And again, you should be able to do the same thing. Now when I go and I just put in the slash, so if I just put in localhost :3210, or I put in localhost 3210 / either way, I should get welcome to the home page. If I do put in that slash and add about and hit enter, oops, and that's what happens when you mistype. So if I put in localhost 3210 / about and hit enter, it says welcome to the about page. If I go in and say localhost :3210 / contact, it should say welcome to the contact page. And if I put in something else that we don't have, I'll just put in hello, and it says page cannot be found. And again, it would be fairly simplistic in here. We could literally go in if we wanted to or needed to do this. We could go in and add those 3 pages. All right. And we could actually add 4 pages. We could even add an error page. And with that error page, then if we had somebody was looking for a file that did not exist, instead of sending them to a page cannot be found, all right, we could send them off to an error page. All right. And hopefully that worked for both of you. And again, hopefully there was really nothing in there that you're like, yeah, that totally made sense. All right. Because now we're going to start to add some more stuff to it. All right. We're actually, for the first time, at least in my opinion, we're going to make an app that sort of means something. All right. But before we do, if I again bring up my console, you'll notice there was /about. That's where it was when I started. I went back to the home page. I went to the about. I went to the contact, and I went to hello. So all that stuff is showing in there. Now, typically, in fact, virtually 100% of the time, you use the console.log when you are in a development mode. But one thing you always should do is before you go into a production mode, remove all of your console.log statements. All right. The last thing we're going to do on this particular example then is we're going to go up and we're going to start to make a lot of changes to this file. What do I mean? Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll leave this one up there, but I'm going to add a new file. All right, just because it'll be a little easier. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, whoops, well, that was wrong. So let me try that again. And I want to add index. I'm going to call it index2.js. All right. Now, a lot of people would say that that's bad practice to have an index and an index2, but it's okay. We'll just do it like this. Now, the first thing that I want to do is I want to go back to my package.json file, and I want to make sure that instead of running index, it runs index2. Otherwise, even if I make these changes, it's still going to be running the old file. I could have given this another name. I could have called one server.js and one app.js or whatever. This is just how I'm doing it. All right. So file save, and now I can close package.json, and now I can start writing. All right. Now, so far, when we've been creating our server, we've been bringing in HTTP. All right. But that's not normally the way it's done. Normally, you go out and you bring in Express. We've talked a little about Express. We're going to talk some more about it today. And the way that you do this is instead of saying, don't type this in, instead of saying this, All right, instead of saying that, we're going to say this. So we're going to do that. That's the first thing. Now, you probably already know this, but we're going to have a big problem when we go to run this. And the reason we're going to have a big problem is Express is a third-party package. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to come down to my terminal. I'm going to stop my run with a Control-C. All right, I'm going to clear the screen. I guess it was cleared already. And I'm going to type in npm I Express. Express is a production side package that we're going to add. So npm I Express, hit enter. Again, it'll spin a little bit and it's adding all that stuff. And notice it says it's added 62 new packages. All right, so this node modules file has gotten a lot bigger. There were about 30 in there before. Now there's more like 90 in there. All right, so that's first thing. I can clear this again. All right, the other thing I can do to make sure is I can bring up my package.json again, and you'll notice that now I've got not a dev dependency, so not a development mode dependency. I've got a production mode dependency. All right, okay. So we do that, and that's bringing it in basically. All right, and then next we say const app equal express. This line to me is a little bit confusing. First of all, you don't have to call it app, but historically, virtually 100% of developers call it app. All right, so this doesn't have to be this name. It's gray right now because I'm not using it anywhere. All right, but what technically is happening here, all right, what technically is happening here is as though we did this, and don't type this, but it's as though we said express app equals new express. Now that's in essence, that's what happens right here. It's not done like that because of the way express was written, but we're basically creating an express object that we're referring to as app. Okay, just so you're aware of that. Again, is that a big thing? No, but I just wanted you to hear that. All right, so I'm going to set up my port. And again, I'll just set it equal like I did before. I don't know, 4321. It should be fine. All right. Okay. Now we could go through the same stuff that's in here. We could go through the same stuff. All right. We could put a get routine, etc. And at the end, we still have to start this thing up. So I'm coming down a little later, and I'm going to type in app.listen to port. And again, we'll have this with an arrow function. And it'll say, just like before, console.log server up and running. On port, and it'll say port 3000. I guess I can't spell. All right, but what's going to be new is the stuff we put in here. All right, the only thing that's really changed right now, I mean, I know we added lines 1 and 2. All right, but we don't have to come in as we did earlier and create an HTTP server by calling http.createServer. We don't have to do that anymore. All right. Now, and you're going to see this as we go on. Okay, we're going to see this. But what we want to do is when we bring up the equivalent of our home page, all right, what we want to do is we want to bring up a really simple form that we're going to make on that home page. So I'd like you please to follow what I'm doing here. So I'm going to come in here and we're going to go over all of it in a moment. right? But I'm going to put a form right in here. Now, I could just, I could basically have created the file already, but I wanted to show you this. What I'm about to show you is not recommended. But when you use the backticks like this, you can write over multiple lines. I could literally create an entire web page right here. I'm going to create a form that's going to have 4 or 5 lines in it, but I could go in and create an entire web page. That's not considered a good idea because just like when we had our HTML page, we talked about a separation of concerns where we didn't want a lot of JavaScript in our HTML. Now it's the reverse. Now we don't want a lot of HTML in our JavaScript page. All right, but we'll put in a few lines just because, again, we can do it this way. So I'm going to say form action equals, and you can call this whatever you want. I called mine answer, and method equal post. And I'll end my form here. We're not done. We're going to put in a couple lines in here. All right, but the first thing is that you got to understand is we're going to be doing something new in just a second. In the past, when we've created forms, and a lot of the forms at least that we created in the AWD1111 class, we either didn't have an action or maybe we went and we just spat back out everything we'd inputted or whatever. All right. And we usually, even if we said method equal post, we didn't send it anyplace. Now we're going to send it to a page that's going to be called answer that we're going to create in a moment. All right. So we come in here then, and this is going to be our form. And I just made it real simple. So inside of a paragraph tag, I said, what color is associated with the word stop? Let me get rid of this. There we go. All right, so just a simple paragraph. All right, and then right next to that, we'll have an input. Type equal text. Now, what we have next is, for the first time, we've always done stuff like said ID equals answer. And I don't know how Evan was, but I usually told the students also put in name equal answer, even though we never, ever, ever used this. We never used that. We only used this. Well, now we don't need that one. All right, because this name is what's going to be used on the server side. Now, since I called my action here answer, whoops, and my name here answer, that's not a good idea. So let's just call it the answer. Okay? Just because I don't want there to be any confusion. All right. So I got to end that. And then let's put right next to it, let's put a button in. And we'll call it, we'll say submit answer. I don't know, whatever you want. Right? So this is what we've added here. What we're saying now is when we're at the home page, what we want to send out is some HTML. We're going to have a very simple form. It's going to say what color is associated with the word stop. Then it'll have a text box that'll be empty. Now, and underneath that, it should have a button that says submit answer. If we go in and click the submit answer button, all right, if we come in and we click the submit answer button, we're probably going to get an error because answer this thing does not exist. But that doesn't stop us from trying it anyway. So let's come in and do a file, save. All right, and then let's start this up. Now I changed the port. It was 3210. I changed it to 4321 just because when I come in here and I start up my server and I say npm run dev start, if it still says server up and running on port 3210, something was screwed up. But if it says server up and running on port 4321, I'm golden. And you can see it says 4321. All right, if you can't see that, and I don't know how well you guys can see that stuff from there, but there it is. So it is up and running. All right. So is that a big deal? Kind of. All right. I should have really done a file save first, but it should still be fine. It's just going to restart the server. Okay. So now I'm going to go back, and I'd like you to do the same thing. Go back onto the internet and go over to localhost :4321 and hit enter. And you should get a simple form that comes up that says what color is associated with the word stop. All right. And then at least on mine, I've got underneath that, I've got the text box and then the submit answer button right after it. Now, it doesn't matter if you leave it blank or you type something in there right now. If you click submit, you should get a message that says cannot post/answer. If you have not tried to do that, please try to do that now, because I want you to see that yourselves. All right. And if you didn't get that, so if the form didn't come up, or after you click the submit button on the form, it didn't say cannot post/answer, please let me know right now.
I have a express is not defined.
Okay, if you've got an express is not defined, it's one of two things. Okay, then either on here you spelled something wrong, and if you say I didn't, I believe you. But you have to make sure you did the NPMI express.
Yeah, I did that. Maybe.
Down below. Because if it says express is not defined, I don't know how it couldn't. Do you have both of these lines in here? Lines 1 and 2.
Yes.
And they're spelled correctly.
Actually, I think I messed this one up. All right, we're good now. I had the const HTTP instead of const express.
Okay. So, like I said, then make sure you go back to with that form in there. You can put whatever you want in there or leave it blank. But as soon as you click submit answer, it should come back and say cannot post/answer. All right. Now, you believe it or not, you just did something really, really important. All right. I'm going back to hopefully you can see my Visual Studio screen on your screen. Okay. Because this is the first time we did a get. All right. Get is, and I've used this example before, even though it's not perfect. Get in very many ways is similar. Get is very similar to like a select. It's not designed to change any information. Post, on the other hand, is. All right. So let's come through here. We're going to put in 3 lines of code, then we're going to take a break. All right. So let's come down here and type in app.post. And for now, we're just going to put in this. We're going to put in /answer. All right. With a request and a response. And all we're going to say in here is res.send. And it's just, we'll just say the form was submitted. Thank you. All right. We're going to change that in just a bit, but I just want you to have some kind of an idea of what's going on in here. So this says, this is what's going to fire when we click that button. It should come back with a message on the screen that says the form was submitted. Thank you. And I want to show you why that's really important though. So I'm going to do a file save. I want to check right now and make sure that this is still running, and it says my server is up and running still, so that's good. Now I'm going to come back again, and you can do the same. Come back to where you have your form, and again, you can either put something in there or leave it empty, but click submit answer, and you should get a message that says the form was submitted, thank you. And if you look up into your address bar, it should now have localhost : 4321/answer. All right, so what you just did was when the user went and clicked that button, you redirected the user to another page. Now, did either of you try doing that where it didn't work?
Nope, mine worked.
Okay. All right, it's 12:56. Let's come back at 1:06. All right, we'll pick it up right there. I need a water. All right, sorry about that. I'm back. Now, I want to go back, so hopefully you can still see this. So far we've had a get. So this is what comes up by default when we go, when we bring up our app. Then our app has got a form in it, and when we click the button, it's bringing up /answer. How did we get that answer? That name has to be the same as this name. All right. Now, what happens though? Okay, and you can do this if you want. Go ahead and go back to I guess to the internet. And if I come in there and just type in by itself, so if I type in localhost 3210/answer and I hit enter, now it may come back and it may say that, but mine came back and said this site can't be reached. What I'm trying to do right there is I'm trying to run a GET request when I have no associated GET method for that. All right, and I hope what I just said makes sense. I want to say it again. If you come in there and you type from your browser window in the address bar, if you type in localhost 3210/answer, it should come up with something like this site can't be reached. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to run a GET request and you don't have any GET thing defined. So what we're going to do is we're going to define that now. So some people like to put all their gets together. Some people, it doesn't matter. They just put them in. But I'm going to put, since I already had one get here, I'm going to put another app.get here. But this time it won't be for /, it'll be for /answer. And again, I will have here a request and a response. In fact, sorry, I need a comma there. All right. And then at the end of this, my arrow function, my curly brace, and all I'm going to do is do a res.send, and it's going to say, you reached this page in error. All right, because there's nothing to do there. So underneath my first app.get, where we put the form, I added another app.get. All right, and I put that in there. Now, one thing, and this is something that's going to change probably either next week or the week after that, and that is, just imagine for a second, imagine that we had a website that had 10 pages on it. All right, and there were a whole bunch of gets and posts and maybe even some deletes and etc. The point is, this index file, this JavaScript file, starts getting really big really fast. So what we're going to do is each one of these things that's in here. So what you see in blue right here, what you see in blue now here. So this is one route. This is one route. This is one route, etc. In fact, that one isn't a route, that's the listen. But the app.post, that's a post route. There's a get route, and there's another get route. We only have 3 routes in here right now, and we're already, it's not that it's that big, it's 25 lines. All right, but we're going to go and pull those routes out. We're going to end up creating what's going to be called a routes folder, and we're going to put those in as controllers. All right, you're going to see that fairly shortly. So after I've just put in this other get, you've reached this page in error, I'm going to do another file, save. I'm going to go back to my browser window. And again, I'm going to enter localhost 3210, and I'm going to hit enter. All right. And I'm looking right now, and mine I thought would have come up. Well, let's see it. Did I stop my server? Let me double check. No, it says my server is running. And it still says this site cannot be reached. I want localhost 3210/answer. And I don't know why. Again, I ran this yesterday, but it should be coming up now with a message that says you should never have gotten to this page. All right. And believe me, even if we're running into errors or problems right now, I can, as much as I can guarantee you.
Mr. Scott, mine popped up.
Yours did. Good. I'd rather have mine not pop up and yours pop up. All right. Did yours both pop up? That was Clayton. That was you, right, John?
Yeah.
Did you? Okay, good. That's fine. All right. All right. Now, what we want to do is we want to add a little bit of stuff in here. What am I talking about? All right. Well, we want to come in and we want to make a couple of changes in here. All right. So let's see. Let's go back in here. Let's go back. And right now, all we're doing when we're posting is we're just saying res.send, this form was submitted, thank you. Well, that's not really what we'd want to do when you think about it. Okay. In other words, what we want to do is we want to check what they submitted, because on that form it said what color is associated with the word stop. So we'd want to check in here and we'd want to basically say if the color that they put in there was red, all right, then we want to basically tell them they were correct. And if they put in something other than red, we want to tell them they were incorrect. Okay? All right. So I'm just going to take this whole line and I'm going to remove it for now. In fact, I'll comment it out. All right, just for completeness, because I'll leave in there what was there. And now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make some checks. So you'll notice if you look in here right now, if I were to uncomment this, notice the word res right now is in gray, and now it's not. All right. Which means, again, we've got those parameters and neither one is currently being used. Why did I tell you that? Because we're going to do an if statement in here. We're going to say if req.body dot the answer, which is what we call that thing earlier, dot to uppercase equal red, not read, red. All right. Now, what is this before we go on? Well, we just made a request and the answer, this thing right here that's called the answer, that is this.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Since it's all in caps, will it only read the caps if you put it in red? Like
okay, the question, no, it'll still read it. The problem is, think about how many different ways you could put in red. All lowercase, all uppercase, and any mixture of cases. So what we're doing is we're taking whatever they put in there and we're putting it into uppercase. So we only have to check one thing. Does that make sense?
Okay, I got you. Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. I mean, we didn't have to do that, but then I don't know how many permutations there are. You know what I'm saying? But capital R, lowercase e, capital D, etc. I don't want to do that. We could have also done the two lowercase here and checked for lowercase red. All right. I mean, it would have been the same exact thing, basically. So if this is the case, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to do another one of these res.sends. And again, we're going to pull out the old backticks and hit enter a couple times. All right. And the first thing we'll do is we'll put in a paragraph that says, congratulations, congrats, whatever you want. Congrats. All right. That is the correct answer. Something like that. And then end our paragraph. Now, the problem is, as of right now, we can do that and we give them the right answer, but it would be kind of nice to give them a way to get back to the home page, especially if they did it wrong. So we're going to put in here an href. We're going to just set it equal to /, and we're going to say return to home page and end our A tag. Now, I'm going to take it for granted, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I'm going to take for granted that that logic makes sense to both of you. All right. Only if we put in red, it doesn't matter how we key it in capitalize wise, but only if we put in red will this get hit. All right. Otherwise, let's put it in else. So else, well, we're going to do almost the same thing. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to copy it. You don't have to if you feel like typing, you can keep typing, but I'm going to come in here. All right. And what happened? Let's see. Else. It'll get fixed in a second. All right. Oh, I need a res.send still. That'll probably help. So let me grab this whole res.send, all of that, and paste that in here. There we go. Now we want to change the message, of course, and say, I'm sorry. That answer is incorrect. Or something like that. And again, give them this so they can go back again to the home page. Okay. So putting all that in. All right, so putting all that in, and because I'm just a little weird about this, I'll put in a couple periods there and save. Now I'm going to go back and run it again. And I haven't done anything to break the server, even though it's been restarting, but I haven't broken it. All right, so I'm going to go back out here again. And I'm going to type in just my local host, :3210. All right. I think I got kicked off of my Wi-Fi connection at home here, so hold on a second.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
So when I submitted like the red, when I hit the button, it just said the form was submitted. It didn't read any of the.
Okay, if you put the stuff in, okay, if you put the stuff in and you've saved,
Yep.
and it did not work, what I'd suggest is it may have cached what you have in there. So close the window that you've got open that's got that local host one and open up another one and do it again. So localhost : 3210. All right, now it's still telling me, I don't know if I've got a problem. I think it was 3210, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it because on line 19 it says /answer when you supposed to put it in there?
No. What should come up though when we just do the slash is this should be coming up. That's just slash. All right, so that's localhost : 3210 /. All right, and that should be coming up. I don't think we broke anything. I don't think we put in anything here that's incorrect. I'll go back and double check my code that I've written. But I don't think
that pops up. That pops up for me, and then I put it in red and hit submit. Okay. And then it just says the form was submitted, like I have.
Okay, well, if it says that, then go back onto here, and where you've got, the form was submitted. First of all, was that commented out?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's interesting then. It's for some reason it's still running a cached version. It has to be. Because if you commented that out, it should be running this. All right. If you put in something wrong and if you put in something right, it should be running this. Now I'm looking here and I don't see anything that we put in here that's wrong. I'm looking for tags that have been misplaced or whatever, and I don't see anything. Clayton, did yours work?
Yeah, mine, like I said, is having a little bit of some issues. Okay, so now when I hit red and hit submit, it says cannot post /answer.
Okay. John, did yours work?
No, mine didn't work. I get a type error that says cannot read properties of undefined reading the answer.
That is really weird. All right, so let's see. Request.body.the answer. He called it the answer right there. I'm looking through my code here because I've not only ran this several times, but I've written it more than once. So let's see. Well, I know what my problem is. So let me see if I can fix mine. My problem is that when I'm running it, okay, and let me change my share for just a second here. All right, my problem is I'm running, I put it back here on, it should be localhost 4321. There it is. Now if I come in here and put in red, hopefully you can see that on your screens. Okay, cannot read properties of undefined. It sounded like one of you had that. We'll try to fix that in just a moment. Now,
Yeah, I don't have that issue. Mine just goes straight to like the form was submitted.
all right. What I will do though, what I will do is once we get this fixed, just in case anybody who's watching this on tape has a problem with it, at the end of the day today, when we get this done and working, I'll just zip it and email it to all of you. So you'll have a copy. All right. But let me leave it there. So type error, undefined, reading the answer. It sounds like at least one of you got that. So let's see.
Yeah, that's what my error is.
All right. So we got to fix that. Well, the answer right there is exactly the same as what's there. The only thing that's different is I did not originally have the type equal text. I don't know if that's going to matter or not, but that shouldn't. I put it in there because I thought that I just omitted it the first time. Let me see if that changed anything. Nope. So it's telling me it's on index.js2 at line 20. So let's take a look at that. So it is this line right here. Request dot body dot the answer dot to uppercase. That's exactly what I did before. I think what I did before, I only had one or two of these. Maybe that's what it is. Let me double check. Save. Go back to here. Nope, it still is giving me an error. Let's see. And 20. Undefined. Well, let me double check my code here because I want to see if I can figure out what the heck happened. Change my share back so you can see me reading my code. Okay. No. Was post. Name is the answer. Button, submit answer. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I've got a working copy of this. Let me bring it up. Okay, so let me bring it up and we'll see if we can figure out what the problem was. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, let's see. Whoops. Folder. All right,
Okay,
this
Mr.
is
Scott,
always
I have the same error as you now.
okay.
I had app.get on line 15 for the if statement. So that's what was messing me up.
Okay, but I want to bring this last one up. All right, right there. And it's still running on 4321. All right. So I'm going to actually change this. I'm going to just give it a different port number. So I'm going to give it 4567, just so there's a different port number in there. That's all. All right. And don't. Okay, good. All right. Let me run it. Okay, file, save. And I know what the problem is, but that's okay. We'll fix it in a minute. So it'll be 4567. I'm going to have to come back in here and make sure in my package.json, yeah, I'm running index 4. I broke this up into 4 parts. So let me come in here and do a terminal, new terminal right here. And when I run this, npm run dev start, it should say that it's running on 4567 or whatever that was I said. Yep, it does. Okay, well, that's good. All right. Now, I want to go back and I want to change, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what was wrong because we left out a line of code. All right. That for whatever reason, not just me, but a lot of people forget to put in. All right. So let me go back to the internet. All right. And I'm going to put in here localhost :4567. There it is. If I put in something wrong, sorry, that answer was incorrect. Return to home page. If I put in something right, your answer was correct. Return to home page. Okay. We forgot to put in one line of code. All right. And seeing this basically showed me what that line was and why it was. So I want to just bear with me for about 15 seconds here. I want to go back to here. We need to add a line of code. All right, I will give you that line of code in just a moment, okay? I promise. I will give you that line of code in just a minute, and yours should work as well. But what I want to do first is I want to bring up this URL. Hopefully you still see the internet on your screen right now. And
yep,
this says, what are express.json and express URL encoded? Hopefully you can see that on your screen because we're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes on this right now. What we didn't do is we didn't add what's called middleware. All right. Now, in here, and I'm not going to read to you, but they explain what you need and why you need it. But it says here, so hopefully you can read that. Let me get it so it's not in blue. All right. Because right now the system, for lack of better words, couldn't understand what we were trying to do. All right. Now, up until version 4 point something, and we're like on 16 or whatever, but until like about version 4 of Node, you had to add not just express in, but you had to add something else that was called or is called body parser. All right. And if we go over here, and if I go over to our npmjs.org and I put in here body parser, all right, it says NodeJS body parsing middleware. And when you look at it, pretty popular, 25 million weekly downloads, which is weird because technically you don't have to download it anymore. All right. Mine works and I didn't download it. I'm going to show you how we get it to work now in just a second. But if you go out there and you look, it says parse incoming request bodies in middleware before your handlers, available on the request.body property. Request.body, it's as though we were bringing it in there in French and it was trying to read it in Spanish. It didn't understand what we were trying to do. So by going in and adding a single line of code, all right, we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to do this anymore. All right. But what we have to add, and I don't know if they show it here or if it's on another page, but we have to add a single line of code in to make it work. I guess it's not shown there. I'm going to show you in a second, but before I do, and the funny thing is, yeah, here we made the mistake. And look, I've got a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to show you. There was body parser. All right. This is the GitHub page for body parser. And when you go down there, it's got even more information on it. All right. And it talks about this stuff in much more depth and breadth of coverage than I would be able to do. All right. But if we keep going, all right, there's another article, Express.js body parser and why you may not need it. Okay. And again, what they say in here is back in the olden days, you need to do an npm I body parser. When you did that, you couldn't type in this. You see the word body parser in blue on your screen, guys? Do you both see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You could when you included it, you couldn't include it like that. Because in JavaScript, that attempts to take a variable called body and subtract from that a variable named parser. So the way you always saw it in your programs was it was body parser, one word, little BODY, capital P, little ARSER, which is virtually how everybody wrote it. All right. Now, it says here, the purpose of this very short article, and it is short, it says is to have you stop running this command. It says if you're using Express 4.16, it says unless you have absolutely a need for it, and you typically don't. All right, all I could say would be is if you were running the program and it didn't work, you could try putting that line in. But I don't think it, I think if you're running the program and it doesn't work, I think you got other problems. All right, now in the olden days, you came in then and you typed in this, and that's actually what I typed in. And app.use body parser.url encoded. Then inside of parentheses, it's an object with a property called extended. All right. So what is that? Well, I went out and found another thing. And when you look in here, one of these talks about the extended property, whether or not you need it, whether or not you don't need it, etc., and whether it should be true or whether it should be false. All right. The bottom line is, there you go. We'll send this back. All right. And it says, like I said, if you read your way through it, it basically says how it's going to do it internally, whether you use true or false. I'd say that if I've looked at 100 of these, 50 to 60 have been extended false, 40 to 50 have been extended true. It doesn't seem to matter. Now, why am I telling you that then? Because today, all we should have to say is just this. So it says we can put in this to parse JSON, and we can now just put in this. Do you see where it says URL encoded, but it no longer says extended true or extended false? All right. Now, if you want, you can highlight that line of code. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. I'm going to highlight it. And now I'm going to change my share. And I'm going to go back to my Visual Code window. All right. And back in that window, let me close this. There we go. Back in my window, you've got to have it and use it up here someplace. I don't think it matters if you say false or true or leave it off, but you might as well put it in like this. You want to put it in before any of your routes. All right. So go ahead and add that line 6 above your first app.get. You can put it in just like that. Save it, run it again. So I'm going to grab that line 2, Control C. I'm going to go back to what I had up there before. All right, so just bear with me for a second. So I'm going to do a file. I'm going to close my folder because I want the original one to work. So I'm going to close my window. Yes, I'm going to have to change my share in just a second. And I will. So I'm going to do a file. I don't want to close the window. I want to close the folder. And I want to do a file, open folder. I want to go back to my desktop, to my Simple Server 2, and open that. All right, so this is what we had. This is the one we had before. Now, let me change my share so you can all see this. All right, so what I'm telling you is you need that line right there. According to the article that I just showed you, you don't even need to put this in there at all, but I'm going to leave it in there because I'm just used to typing it in. It's funny, I follow a lot of people on social media that are into Node, and most of them say, you know, nobody knows exactly what this does. It's pretty much boilerplate code, but you need it, so you better put it in there. You know, to me, that's a pretty crummy explanation. So I went out to Stack Overflow, and I will email all of you later that URL that I showed you. All right. Because if you want more information, then you'll be able to have it. So I'm going to save this. All right. And this is back at, this is at 4321. So I'm going to come in here and do my npm run dev start. That's up and running. All right. Now I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to go back to the internet. And also I'm going to change my share so I'm showing the internet. And back here, I'm going to do my localhost :4321. There it is. If I put in red, congrats. This is my original one. So yours should work. And if you put in some garbage or leave it blank, you should get that. So try that and let me know if either one of you still had an error.
No, I worked.
Okay, good. Clayton, did yours work? I think that was John speaking.
Yeah, mine worked.
All right, good. All right, that was longer than I had anticipated, but hey, you see some of the errors that it's really easy to make. All right. All right. Now we're going to do something, but I want to show you the end product first of what we're about to do. Okay. So let me come back, change my share, set it back to Visual Studio Code. All right. And I'm going to come in and do a file, and I'm going to close my window, my folder, I should say. And I'm going to do a file. And I'm going to do a file open folder. All right, desktop. All right, you'll have to tell me, can you see on your screen right now a package.json file? And here it says BMI. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, because what I want to show you here is, like I said, what we're going to run. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do my, in fact, let me clear. and I'm going to do an npm run dev start. Okay, boom. All right, it should come up. Yeah, it's running on 3210. That doesn't really matter, but I'm going to quickly change my share one more time, then we're going to start writing this together. So let me go back to share. Let me go back to the internet and localhost. Come on, Jeff. Learn to type. Localhost :3210. All right, so we're going to bring up something that looks like this. And I'm going to make it back to 100% so you can see all of it. All right, there it is. And if we run this and we leave any of these fields blank, we're going to get an error. So compute BMI, error, first name cannot be empty, boom. All right, so I put in my first name. Error, last name cannot be empty. Okay, so I put in my first name and I put in my last name. All right. Error, height must be between 12 and 96 inches. Okay, and I should have put in some code to keep those values in there, but I didn't. So let's say we put in 72. All right, boom. Okay, error must be okay. So now let's say we fill the whole thing in. And I'm going to put in my dream weight, which it isn't, but I'm going to put that in anyway. All right, and compute, and you get this. Now looking at that, hopefully at least, that makes some sense to you as far as what we're doing. We've done this program before. I have done it in C#. I've done it in just straight HTML, JavaScript, etc. In fact, I even had them do it back when we were doing the Android class. All right, but this is the first one that we're going to create, and what I'm going to ask you to do is to make some changes to it later. But for right now, this is what we're going to do. So this is what I would like all of you, or each of you, to do, whether you're watching this live or you're watching it on tape. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and don't worry if you can't see anything. You will in just a moment. All right. I just had so much stuff open. So the first thing I want to do, and I don't want to keep changing my share on you, but if you would please go to your desktop, and on your desktop, create a new folder and call that folder BMI. All right, you can, all lowercase is just fine. So create a brand new empty folder on your desktop that's called BMI. All right, then double click on that folder to open it. Right mouse click on that folder and choose Git Bash here. All right. So once you're in Git Bash, I mean, some of you might be using Git Desktop. There's a bunch of different Gits you can use. All right. I've just never taken the time to teach myself those. So from here, let's do our git init. Okay. So that initialized an empty Git repository. Now we're going to do something else, but before we do, what I'd like you both to do is to go out to github.com. All right. So go out to github.com. And under github.com, I'd like you to create a new repository for yourself. That new repository will just be called, come on. All right, it'll be called just BMI. If you used uppercase, put it in uppercase. I made mine all lowercase. All right. So do that. I'm going to make mine public. You will, of course, make yours private and click your create repository. All right. That should give you back to that page. That's kind of the main page where it should have your handle for GitHub/BMI. Make sure that yours is set to HTTPS near the top and not SSH. All right, and grab that line that's right next to it, but actually go down a little further, and where it says git remote add origin HTTPS : github.com/ whatever your handle is /BMI.git. Grab that line and copy it to the clipboard, please. All right. then back in Git, where you still are in Git, paste that in and hit enter. You can always tell whether or not it worked because all you have to do is type in git space remote space -v like victory.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
I don't use git bash.
Okay. That's why I said, however you do yours. All
Yeah,
right,
I just make a new. Yeah, okay, I gotcha.
Okay. The reason I'm telling you, there's a reason for me showing you this, though, and for a reason for me showing it to you like this. All right. In fact, that I'm glad you let me know. Okay. And that's, like I said, that's totally fine. But I'm going to change my share so you can see what I'm doing. All right. You should be able to see my git bash window here now. All right. Yes.
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. So let me clear. So I did my git init. So if I do a dir here, all right, it's not showing anything because there's nothing in here yet. All right, I think I did my git init, but let me double check. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So what do I want to do? Well, what I can do right from Git here, and there's a reason I'm showing it to you like this, is I'm going to do my npm init right here. So I'm going to do npm init. I'm not going to put in the -y. So I'm just going to say npm init, and I'm going to hit enter. All right. Package name BMI is fine. Version 1.00 is fine. Description, this is a NodeJS app to help calculate a person's body mass index or BMI. All right, entry point. Well, I'm going to make mine app.js. You can leave it index.js. It doesn't really matter. All right, test command, nothing. Now, this is what I want to show you. It picks up, when you do this from Git, it picks up the repository for you. When I did the terminal underneath Visual Studio Code, it did not pick up the Git repo. When you do it from here, it does pick up the Git repo. And to be honest with you, normally when I am working on this stuff, I have a different window for my terminal. The reason I've had the same window for you guys is because it's too hard to do all these screen shares all the time. All right, so hit enter. Keywords, I don't need any. Author, I'll put in my name.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
So I have my repo linked to my github.com. Is that all we need to do? Is like, because I haven't learned git bash.
Oh,
because Mr. G taught me how to use the GitHub desktop
right.
in my first year.
And I know that,
how to use.
Yeah, and I know that John, or both of you might know Git desktop because I know that's what Evan uses. All
Yeah.
right. So it's no big thing. It doesn't matter which one you use, as long as you can push it out there in the end. That's all that matters. All right. For the license, you can put ISC. I usually put in MIT, and of course, it did all this. Is that okay? Hit enter. Boom. Now I've got that. All right. And that was not like that was that big a thing. I realize that. All right. But I'm going to change my share. So I go back into Visual Studio Code. It's up there. There it is. Package. There we go. All right. So you should be able to see that on your screen right now. Okay. And the only other thing that I want to add here, and you can open up your terminal then, is first, I want to come in here and I want to do an, why is it short? There we go. Okay. So what do I have here? Error, cannot set headers that are set to the client. Answer, I'm not worried about that. It should be fine. As we have been doing, I'm going to, and it doesn't matter which order you put this in, but I'm going to do an npm I of express. All right. And then I'm going to do an npm I npm I minus capital D of NodeMon. Okay. And you'll notice it's interesting that in here, even though I kept the package.json there, it went and it basically, I'm looking in here, there's my dev dependency. Sometimes it asks me to close this file and then I can reopen it. Other times it doesn't. But I've got my Express and I've got my NodeMon. That's what I care about. All right. Then, as always, go in and make this change. All right. And the problem is, the reason that all this stuff is all set for me already is I've got the finished product up. I don't want to do that. I'm going to close this and I'm going to open up a brand new one so I can start all over again. All right. I don't want to be the kind of person that just sits there and says, here, and have you type this in. I want to do it together because I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've proven that pretty much already. So let me close my folder. And don't worry if your screen does go away. So open a folder, desktop, BMI. Okay, so that's what I've got in there right now. So select folder. Did it come back up on the screen? Can you see my package.json right here?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So when I look at this, yep, it has my repo, but it doesn't have my other stuff in it. That's fine. So I'm going to go to terminal, new terminal. And again, I'm going to come in here. You've already done this if you were following what I said earlier. I'm going to close my package.json and I'm going to do an npm I express. And then I'm going to do my npm I minus capital D of NodeMon. All right. Then I'm going to clear the screen, go back into here, reopen my package.json and make those changes. So it now has my dependencies, both my production and my developer dependencies. But I want to change again, as we've been doing all the time, get rid of this line. And we're going to make start. And this is going to say node. I'm going to call mine app.js with a comma here. And for dev start, it'll be NodeMon app.js. All right. And then finally, after you get done with that, where it says main up here, mine already says app.js. And if yours doesn't, you can change it. You can actually still leave it as index, but the one we're going to be using is going to be called app.js. And that's why I'm doing it that way. All right. Okay. We're going to get started, and it's almost, believe it or not, time to take another break, but we're going to get started. So I'm going to do my file save. So everything is saved. All right. And I think what we'll have time to do before the break then is I'd like you to come in here, then you can close the the package.json if it's still open. All right. I'm not even going to start this up or anything yet. It's totally fine. And if yours is running, it's totally fine. All right. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a new file. All right. Now, normally I do it right here. I'd create a new file and I do it right there. All right. But we're going to create an HTML
Mr.
file.
Scott,
Yes.
real quick, before you start doing that, how do you get the package lock JSON?
How do you get it?
Yeah, no, like, because I forgot like what you put in the terminal.
Oh, you don't have to put in anything. When you go in and you do your installs, it should be added for you automatically. Because all that is it's got everything that's in your node modules file, and it's what version of those packages. So it's everything that's in here.
Yeah, but how do I put it in the terminal to get it to pop up?
Yours isn't showing on your screen or what?
No, I was trying to play catch up and I just forgot like what you put into.
Okay, all I put in was I first went in and did an npm space I space express. When you put that in, you should have a node modules, and it probably will create the package lock JSON too.
Yep, I got that. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what I was looking for.
All right. The only other one that we put in there then, the only other one that we put in there was NodeMon. Okay.
Yep, I got that.
All right.
I'm good now.
Okay. So what I'd like you to do is underneath your BMI itself. So underneath here, let's add a new folder. We're going to start doing this the way it actually is supposed to be done. But again, we're crawling, and then we'll be walking, and then we'll start to run. So I'd like you to create a folder that's named public. I want it to be under BMI, not under node modules. It should be a separate folder right there that's called public, and there'll be nothing in it. All right. But we're going to put something in it right now. The first thing we're going to put in there is I'm going to click on public so it's highlighted, and I'm going to add a new folder. And that new folder is going to be called CSS. All right, so under public, I should have a CSS folder now. Then under public, I want to add another folder. All right, and that will be, we'll call it images. All right. And then underneath there, I want to add one more folder. Now it looks like it put there, I think it's right. I'll double check in a second. But then under public, I want to add one more folder. We're not going to put anything in here, but I'm going to add a JS folder. And it's important that you realize that that JS folder is for client-side JavaScript. Nothing we put in there is going to show in our console down here. Rather, we'd have to right mouse click, choose inspect, and go over the console window there. All right, the only reason I'm having you put that in is just to show you that that's exactly what's in there. All right, then click on your CSS folder and let's add a file in there, and we'll just add styles.css. All right, now you can do this any way you want, but on mine, when I ran it, maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't see it, but on the home page, it had a picture that I used in here, and that would be in what's in my images folder. What I will do, because we're going to take a break in about 1 minute, is I'm going to email you that picture. If you don't want to use it, you can go out, you can use any picture, any BMI picture you want, or not even have one. All right, but I'm going to send you what I have. So if you want yours to look like mine, fine. If you say, no, I want to use my own, then use your own. In fact, it is 2 o'clock right now. Let's take 15 this time, and let's come back at quarter after. And I'm going to grab that picture right now and then send it to you. All right, it's 2:15, so I am going to start up. I sent you that image and I copied it into my images folder. There it is, just so you see it, no biggie. But again, like I said, you don't have to put anything there. You can put something there. I'm hoping that when we get done with this project and you fix it up a little bit, that it'll be something that you want to put into your portfolio. Whether or not that's the case, of course, as always, is going to be up to you. So underneath my public folder, so under the folder itself, I want to add a file. Normally I'd make this index.html, and I could do that, but I just called mine bmi.html. All right, and again, make sure it's not under any of the subfolders, that it's under public itself. This is about 25 lines long, but out of those 25 lines, rather, we can put in our exclamation point, hit enter, and have it build most of it for us. All right, on here, I just call this, whoops, I called it homepage. All right, and then in the body, I'm just going to give you everything that I put in here. H1, and I called it BMI calculator. All right, then I put in a form, and I'm going to give you the CSS too in just a minute. But again, you can use your own. You don't have to use what I've got. But I've got action equals BMI, method equal post. All right, and then I've got some four different label input combinations. So label for equal, I gotta stop doing that. First name, and then an input type equal text, name equal text, name equals first name. And then I'm going to go down and copy that. So I want this 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So I want a first name. I want a last name. I want a height. And I want a weight. And two more things about this. First of all, I made both of these number fields. Also, when somebody runs your program, they may or may not have a clue as to what they're supposed to be putting in here. So I just put in here, I just hard coded 12 to 96. And in fact, I put the colon after that. Oops. The 12 to 96 colon. And then for the weight, I put in 12777 with a colon. Okay. Now, there's been absolutely no CSS put in here. I'm going to put in the link to my CSS in just a second. Okay. But as of right now, there's nothing. So you'll notice that if I do a file save and I bring this up in live server, it's going to look pretty awful. There it is. All right, you may or may not be able to see it. I don't think, probably can't, but that's okay. So let's do two more things. First, at the end of our head section, let's type in link and hit tab. And we'll put in here css/styles.css. I'm assuming that you made that as I asked you to do. And under our H1 tag, I'm going to put in an image tag. Source equals, and again, I'm imagining that you made an images folder like I asked. So images slash BMI dot, what was that? BMI.jpg. Okay. And alt equal, I just put in here BMI picture. Picture. All right. Okay, so let's see. File, save. Open it with live server. There it is. Doesn't look very nice right now, but you get the idea. All right. So I'll leave that up for just a second. Again, that you have already. Add the link line. After the link, create the form. And I'll leave that up there for just a moment so that you can do that. And I was very vanilla or very generic with the CSS that I put in. So I didn't do anything with Flexbox or with grid or anything like that. To be honest with you, while I was doing this, I was on the phone with somebody. So no excuse. I'm just telling you the way it's the way it is. All right. I'm taking for granted then that you've all had time to put all that in. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go over to my styles.css file and I'm going to start putting in some styling. So for the body, again, feel free to change this any way you want. Background, I made blanched almond, and I did a text align center. So hopefully most everything will be aligned in the center by default. Then for my H1, I did a font size of 3 rem and another text align center just to be sure. Then for the image, I did a display block and a margin 0 auto. So I'll give you a second to put that stuff in. There's not a lot here. There's about 50 lines, so it won't take very long. If we finish this early today, I'm done because that's all I had ready for today. And otherwise, if we don't finish it today, but even though I think we will, if we don't finish it today, then we'll finish it up tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, I should say. Right, hopefully you've had a chance to put at least most of that in. I'll go down to here. And for the form, I told it to display inline block. All right, labels. All right, I'm going to give you a second to type that in if you are following along. There's only 4 or 5 more lines to put in here, so. Should be everything. Let me take a look at it here then. Server, I don't know why, but we go. All right. When I put it back to 100%, oh, I didn't put it there. I got to put a couple line breaks in there. All right. So that isn't terrible. I'll fix this with line breaks in just a moment. I could have done it with margin too, but I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Like I said, this is how I did it. So we got first name, we got last name, we've got, that should be height. And that one should be weight. And I probably had 2 line breaks here. All right, let's try that again. Well, I don't know why that's not lined up, but it should be. All right, maybe I missed something, I don't know. But that is, even there, that isn't terrible, but it's not showing my button, so let's make sure I got the button in there. And I didn't put it in. I said I gotta fix that. I don't know what's wrong with that, but something was screwed up. It looks like my text aligned right. It does look like it's aligned, but I don't know. 25 rem, that should be correct. I don't know. All right, but I'm going to give you a second here, so I'm going to take it from the top and put it in there. If you want that again, fine. If you want to go back and rewrite it, because you can rewrite that a heck of a lot better than I did, it's not a problem. I'll leave that up there for about a minute or two, then I'll move it down.
Mr. Scott,
Yeah.
can you scroll down to your input and button for your styles?
And that was what was at the bottom. So. Oh, that might be it. Yeah, it looks a little better. All right, so that's what you should have when you get done. not at all operational yet, but we're going to fix that next. And again, in here, make sure you add your button and either work it with padding if you want and margin. You know, if you want to put a bottom margin or a top margin in there, you could have done that too. I just used a couple line breaks. All right. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, there's quite a bit of typing in here. And I tried to lay this out and make it as simple to understand as possible. And I guess in the end, you'll be the ones who will tell me whether or not I succeeded. So am I right in assuming with you two watching that
Yeah.
you've got everything for the styles and everything for the BMI.html?
I think I got everything but the styles except for like the paragraph.
All right, then let's go back to that.
Yeah, that's what I'm missing right there.
All right. All right, so hopefully you're both caught up and hopefully when you bring it up, it looks decent on both ears. So go back up to right under public. We want to go in, we want to add another file, and that'll be our app.js file. Again, you don't want that in the JS folder. There should be nothing in the JS folder. In your images, if you move that image over or got your own, and in CSS, there should be styles. All right, so let's start filling in app.js. And this was made using Express. So before we run this, of course, we'll have to go in. We don't even have, let's see, we do have the package.json. Did we put all that stuff? Yeah, we did all that earlier. Good. So that's all done. We've got NodeMon. So yeah, and that's done. So that's good. So let's go in here and just start typing. So again, const express equals require. Okay. And you can either put single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't matter. There's also, I do want you to hear this. I don't remember what the exact syntax for it is, but there is a line that you can put into your package.json file up near the top of it. And if you put that line in, then instead of putting const express equal require, you can use an import statement. So it looks more similar to other languages. You see both of them in the field. The import is a newer way to do it. I guess I'm doing it the older way. So I'm got my const app equal express. Const wrong. All right. I've got const port, and this time let's do the process .env .port or, and I'm just making up a number here, 8888. Okay. All right. Those are more or less boilerplate types of things that you're going to do all the time. You know, you're going to go and require express, you're going to instance express, and you're going to set your port. That really isn't anything new. Now we're going to do a few things. I actually came in here and I got 4, 7, 11. I've got about almost 15 constants that I created. Now, this is old school JavaScript. And what I mean is when I make my own programmatic constants like this, I put them all in uppercase. You don't have to do that, but that's what I did. So you probably see me do stuff like this before. So I've got min height equal 12. Max height is 96. I didn't think anybody'd be shorter than a foot or taller than 8 feet. So those are my weight types of constants. So Then I had my error message constants. And again, you could change these if you don't like the way that I wrote them. I would not at all be offended. The outer range for the height and the weight, I used backticks. This. Right. And I had what I called my range constants. Actually, they're not range, they're status constants. Because we do figure out the BMI status, so. So we've got underweight, optimal weight, okay? And then I had my range constants. And there's 3 of them, and that's it. Now, my guess is probably you both remember this, but when you're working with this stuff, if you've got a BMI under 18.5, you're underweight. So let me put a comment here. So that means you got a BMI that's less than 18.5. If you're optimal, you've got a BMI that's greater than or equal to 18.5 and less than 25. All right. For over, you've got a BMI that's greater than or equal to 25 and less than 30. And for obese, you've got a BMI that's greater than or equal to 30. Now, you may or may not have seen this. You may or may not even care. But when you look at some of those pictures that are out there now, the world is obese. All right. And I'm a good example. I got to lose some weight. But the point is, there's now several layers. I think there's 3 levels of obese. All right. So that's those. Now, if you remember, we've got this public folder. And that public folder, as you can see, has CSS. It has basically everything in there, right? It's got everything in there. Okay. And in fact, now that I look at this, our thing itself, our project was called BMI, right? We don't want our app.js to be under public. Okay, so let's move it. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to right mouse click on it and I'm going to choose cut. And then I'm going to right mouse click on where it says BMI. Usually that works. And I was going to use paste, but let's see. Didn't like it. Oh, maybe I should close it first. So the one I want to move is my JavaScript file, or did it move it? Where is the darn file now? There it is, app.js. Let me close that. I've done that before and it's worked. So let's see if I can just drag it over there. Don't like that either, but we'll have to remember to move that, all right? That app.js should not be there. It should be right under BMI. It shouldn't be under public. All right, but what we want to say next is we want to I'll put let program, geez, put your fingers on the right keys. Let program know about public folder. All right. So how do we do that? We start to use some middleware. App.use express.static public, like that. All right. And when you look at that, what it's saying is static stuff is not dynamic. So probably most of the time as the program runs, what is inside of the public folder, that being the client side, JavaScript, the CSS, the images, and the HTML, probably are not going to change a lot. All right, all we're doing is we're starting to add some functionality to this. All right, this public folder is going to change as we go on, but for right now, it's just fine the way that it is. All right, so the next thing we want to do then, so let program know about public folder via the app.use middleware. All right, then we're going to come down and the next thing is to do another app.use, but this is that URL encoded that we did before. All right, I won't even put a comment there. We'll just put it right underneath. So app.use express.url encoded extended false. All right, again, it's supposed to work whether you say that, and most of the time people do that and they actually have it with spaces like that in there. I've never understood why, because I've done it without it and it works just fine, but that's fine. All right, so we've got that. So far we've come in here and in this file we've created about 15 different constants and we put in a couple lines in here so that we were able to add some middleware, and we basically got the server ready by letting it know we're using Express and letting it know what port we're using. Okay. All right. So let's continue on. So now what we're going to do next is we're going to define some routes. All right. And the first one will be an app.get. And basically it's what do we want to do? All right, what do we want to do when we go there? You know, we got our requests, we've got our response, nothing new here. All right, and we'll do a res.send file. And really, what we want to come up is this thing called bmi.html. All right, and now that I think about it, I think it would make more sense that we should call this index.html. So let's rename it. I'm just going to right mouse click on it, choose rename, and make it index.html. Because the reason for that is BMI is actually the page we want to move to when we give out the BMI information. So it really does make more sense to call this index.html. Okay. All right. So what do we want to do with this res.send file? Well, we're going to do this. We're going to say __ name. I'm going to go over all this in a minute, plus index.html, just like that. Okay, so I'll let you put that in, and that's it for that first route. Now, what is this doing? Again, it's saying when we bring up the home page, okay, we want to use, and you have to learn to spell, it's not dire name. It's the directory name, and that directory name, it's getting it from here. So it's basically saying public, and then on the end after public, it's adding to that index.html. All right, now, I have no idea if I've made any mistakes or not, but I don't think I have. Okay, and I'm going to just, even though this will go way at the end, I'm going to, for now, I'm going to say app.listen, port, console.log, app running on port. So all I've done in here right now is we've come in, we have set up our index.html, but all we've done in here is to set up a route that goes with it and basically allowing our server to start running. Let's just see if it does anything right now. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a view terminal. I'm going to do my npm run dev start. All right, now it crashed. So what didn't it find? It says some module not found. I'm wondering.
Mr. Scott, did you change
Yes.
it in your package JSON?
I don't know. Let's look. I mean, whatever it is, no, it is app.
Okay.
And then, oh, the problem is it's trying to run app.js from inside of public. I have to physically move this. That's what the problem is. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to close app.js. I'm going to get the heck out of here because I hate moving stuff around inside of code because I always screw it up. So I'm just going to go back to the desktop and move it from there. So I'm going to go into public. I grabbed my app.js file. I'm going to cut it and I'm going to put it outside of there. So I'm going to paste it in there. So just so you see this, what I just did was this. My app.js is no longer in public. Okay, I moved it out of there. And let's see once. So let's come back into here. Still crashing, but let's see if we can figure out why. All right. Oh, okay, I spelled something wrong inside of app.js. One of the constants, min height, min weight, max weight, Well, it doesn't like one of them. Max, weight, min, weight, max, height, min, height. Well, that was the error it was giving me, so I want to figure out what the darn thing is. Oh, that's it. Okay. It's in my error messages. See that? I put min WH. That's the wonders of copy and paste. There we go. Hopefully that restarted the server now. There it is. Okay, it says app running on port 8888. So let me just go and actually bring up a window here. I know you don't see it, but it's okay. So I'm going to come over and localhost 8888, and it comes up. All right.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
I did the npm run dev start, and I'm getting an error that says nomon is not recognized as an internal or external command.
Did you do an npm I-d nodemon first?
npm.
You can tell by going into your package.json file and seeing if you've got a dev dependency in there, and it'll say nodemon. And if you don't have it, then you didn't do it.
Okay, yeah, I didn't do that.
Okay, so you should be able to do that and then run it again, and hopefully at least that'll fix everything. Okay. Let me go back here. All right. And again, I didn't have to do that. The only reason that I did that was to just see, hey, I'd like to go and do this incrementally. All right. I mean, I've already put in 40 lines of code, but as I go and put in these routes, it would be kind of nice to know that they're working. So there's an app.get. Now we're going to have a BMI page in just a second, but I'm going to put in another app.get right now that if somebody tries to go to that BMI page prematurely, for lack of better words, all right, that if they try to do that, we're going to kind of do what we did before. So request response, and we're going to do a res.send with a backtick. And I'm just going to basically come in here. Come on, get out of there. I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to say something like, I'm going to put a paragraph tag in here that says, you got to this page in error. And then, don't even need a paragraph tag, but I put one in, I guess. Just in case somebody tries to go out incorrectly over to that, all right? So if somebody tries to do a get to the page we're going to end up posting to, it'll just come back and say, you got to this page in error, all right, etc. All right, now we want to actually do our post route, and this is pretty long, just so you're aware of it. All right, I'll tell you what, it's 2:54. I'm going to go till 5 after 3. And then as soon as we get done with that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. All right, so I want to put in my post route. And like I said, there's going to be quite a bit of code in here. All right. Now, just so you know, in just a second here, this REQ thing is going to blacken because we're going to use it. All right. Everything that we go and add, everything that we're going to go and add by putting something into those form fields is going to go into our request.body object, an REQ.body object. Why am I telling you that? Because there's going to be 4 pieces of information. So I said let, and just called them what they were. So first name, equals req dot body dot, and notice the IntelliSense even sees that. So let last name equals request dot body dot last name. Let height equal request dot body dot height. And let weight equal request dot body dot weight. So for lack of better words, these things are representing our form field values. All right. So we're going to grab what was put in there in the request, because that's what we're making when we're sending out that form. All right. I also had another variable that I put in here that I just called flag. All right. Some people, with Boolean variables, they call them flag. I know that I called it like keep going a lot in the C# class. We could call it that, but I just called it flag. So I said let flag equal, and I set it to true to begin with. All right. And I've said this kind of thing before. I don't want to get off on too big a tangent or anything. Some people like to set their stuff to true and then be proven false. Some people like to set their stuff to false until it's all proven true. All right. Either way, it's going to be fine. We're going to have in here 4 different if statements. Okay. Now, would I have been better off writing separate routines for these? The answer is probably. All right. And there's some duplicative code in here too, but I want you to see this. All right. So I started out with if flag, and flag was already set to true. So we're going to get into that. All right. So then I started to check things. So I said if first name equal nothing. Now I want to mention something, and this is pretty important. All right. Typically in the past, when we've been validating, I always told you to run the trim function on here. Trim is something that's known on the client side. It's not known on the server side. So if you were to put first name.trim in there, you'd get an error message and it would tell you that trim is not recognized. And if you say, well, how did you know that? Because that's what I did. All right. So we're going to do it like that. And if that's the case, we're going to say flag is equal to false. And we're going to do a res.send. Try that again. Now, just so you know, with this res.send, I did it for each one of these. So I did it if you had a bad first name or a bad last name or a bad height or a bad width or weight rather. Probably I only needed to do it once. I probably could have just done it out here someplace with a res.send, but I did it 4 times. What I'm going to ask that you do, not today, but when we get done with this, is part of your next assignment. And it won't be the one that's due this coming Sunday. It'll be the one that'll be due the 18th. So a week from Sunday. I'm going to ask that you pretty and fix up my code. And then I'm going to ask that you do another program that's going to be similar in nature to the one we're doing now. All right. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, I haven't written those specs yet. I hope to write them tonight or tomorrow, but you are going to get those. All right. You are going to get those specs by Friday. Okay. All right. Since I'm using the backticks, I can now come in here and use those errors that I wrote. That one is first name error right there. So let's take just a second here. You'll notice, first of all, first name is now blackened because we're using it. Flag is now blackened because we're using it. But what we're doing in here, at least it is my hope, that everything that's in here between lines 52 and 61 makes sense to you. So if flag is true, in other words, if we want to get in here, and we do because we set it to true up above, we're going to check. And if the first name is empty, flag is now false, because if flag is true, that means we still have good data. So since we set it to false, then, like I said, I'm literally writing out that spreadsheet here. All right, and that's just going to link to it. This is going to print my first name error, and then it'll have a hyperlink underneath it that says return to homepage. All right, so I'm going to copy every bit of this code. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it back in again. Why? Because now I can just change it to last name. So that'll become last name. This will become last name error. All right. Could that have been changed and put into one function? I'm going to let you try to figure that out. All right. So we now have half of our stuff done. In other words, for our validation, we've got 2 of the things that we're validating are now done. All right. 2 of the 4 things we're validating. Let's put the other 2 in, then we'll take a break. All right. So I'm going to come down here. So in other words, if I want to put a comment in here, I can say validate first name field not empty. And then come down here and say validate last name field not empty. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to say validate height not empty and height in range. In this case, again, it's between 12 and 96. All right. And then a little bit later, after we write that, we'll have to validate that the weight is not empty and the weight is within range. In other words, it's between 1 and 777. All right, so I'm going to give you the code for this. We'll copy it to the other one because you just have to change your heights to weights. All right, then we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got maybe 20 or 30 more lines to write. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and say if it's not a number. Now remember, what isNaN does is it checks for the absence of a number. So if you leave something blank, that's the absence of a number. If you put in something non-numeric, that's the absence of a number. Okay. So if isNaN height or the height is less than the min height, or the height is greater than the max height. Well, those are all our error conditions. Either it's non-numeric, or it's less than 12, or it's greater than 96. All right, so if that's the case, we pretty much want to do what we did up here. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to copy this whole flag equal down to the res.send, and I'm going to paste that in right there. So I want the flag to be false, and now I want it to say out of range, what was it? Height, and return to home page. And then I can just copy this, whoops, get rid of blank space, just copy all of that down to right here. And all I have to do is change this to a W, 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 and this to OORW. All right. So we're doing the same thing in both of these. All right. It is 3:06. Let's come back. Let's make it 3:20. We should be able to finish this then by the end of the period. All right. All right, it is 3:15. So what we've done so far is we set up our Express server and our port. Then we made our maximum and minimum height and weight constants. Then we did our error message constants. Then we did our status, BMI status constants. Then we did our range constants. All right, we added our middleware, that being express.static, to let the system know that public is going to be the folder that's going to hold all of our static files, meaning our HTML files, our CSS files, and any client-side JavaScript files and image files. All right, and then we did the express, so we're able to, the system can understand what we're working with. In many ways, with this URL encoded, what we're going to be talking about as we get more on in here is sometimes stuff is going to be returned, and it's going to be returned in straight JSON. If you don't know what that means, you're going to actually learn about it tomorrow, I think, and you'll see it. And you know, there's ways that you can convert JSON into a string format to make it come out as HTML, and you can go the other way as well. So then we did our routes. For our get route, we just said we want you to bring up our index.html file. We had another get for this BMI, and if somehow you put that in, you should just say, it should just say you got to this page in error and let you return. And then we've spent most of our time on this post route. So this is our /BMI. All right, so our request, again, these are the 4 fields that we are putting into the 4 form fields right there. And I guess one more. So these 4 right here. Flag is just that. Then we did our validations. If our first name was empty, we set flag to false. We just printed out, basically showed a message on screen that was going to say, the fact that the first name, error first name cannot be blank or something like that. Then we put a hyperlink out there that allowed the user to go back to their homepage. Then we did the exact same thing for the last name. So no differences between those two, except the first one had first name right here and FNE right there, and the second one has last name there and LNE. So if you look, first name FNE, last name and LNE. All right, then we validated both our height and our weight. The height cannot be empty, so that's being hovered right here. And in addition, the height can't be out of range. So if it either is non-numeric or it's less than 12 or it's greater than 96, we again set our flag to false. We again put in our message, which is going to basically say error out of range height. All right, and then we'll allow them to go back. And then we did the exact same thing for the weight. All right, again, double check here, height, min height, max height, OORH, weight. All right. Weight. It looks like I've changed them all. All right. This was our listen. So if we get down to here, if we've made it down this far, all right, we're still in our app.post right here. So after that if statement, I'm going to go and add a couple more variables. So if we get to this point, what do we know? We know A, first name was not empty. Next, we know last name was not empty. Next, we know that the height was not empty and was in range. Finally, we know that the weight was not empty and was in range. All right, and the reason we know that is if we get down to this point right here, flag should still be true. All right, because if we found something else, we set flag to false, and basically we're going to be sending them off to a page. Now, I didn't do this on here, but we could have, I suppose. I'm going to put this in, and hopefully I won't get an error, but say if flag, because flag should still be true here. So let me go and move these comments up to there. So if flag, in other words, now we're cool. Everything's cool. All right, so I made some more variables. Let fn equal request dot body dot first name. Let ln equal request dot body dot last name. Let h for height equal, and I did a parse float on here. You should remember what that is, of request dot body dot height. Then let w for the weight equals parse float request dot body dot weight. All right, so we've got those. So what's left? How about the BMI? So we're going to write another function for that in a minute, but let BMI equal, and I just called it calculate BMI. And in order to do that, the BMI is going to need the height and it's going to need the weight. And it'll give me some god-awful number with tons of decimal places. So when it returns, I'm going to do a .to fixed to 2 decimal places on it. It's like that. All right. And then finally, we're ready to start writing this thing out. Okay. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, what about the weight status? We'll hit that in a minute. All right. In fact, let's just do it now. So let BMI status equal calculate BMI status. All right. And we'll pass into that the BMI. All right. So now, if everything's still cool, we've got all this stuff. And in fact, let's see, this shouldn't be height and weight here. This should be H and W. Okay? Because that's what I've got here. I probably didn't even need to redo these because I did them up on top as height and weight, and that'd probably still work. All right? So we've got all that. So what do we want to do then? Well, now I'm going to say let str equal, and I'm going to use backticks. Why? Because this is where I'm going to fill up that big string. So again, I had a link, rel equals style sheet, and my href. Then just in paragraphs, I put every field in there. Let me just copy this down a bunch of times. So first name, last name, height and weight. Okay, and now that I've got all that, I'm going to do a res.send of that string. So that's actually what should be writing everything out on the screen for me right there. And I'm done. I'm not done, period, but I'm done in this particular function. So this is the end of my app post right there. All right, I've got about 10 more lines to write and then we're finished. I'll go back and review everything when we get done. So let calculate BMI equal, and again, we're going to use arrow functions. All right. I don't even need those sets of parentheses. There's shortcuts with arrow functions, so I'm going to show it to you that in a minute. Okay, that's the whole function. And that's it. So let's take this last one from the top then. All right. Hopefully the stuff that was in here that I went over earlier made sense. Okay. Setting all that stuff up for height, weight, first name, and last name. Then we validate that the first name's not empty. Then we validate that the last name's not empty. Oops. All right. Then we validate that the height is not empty and it's within range. Then we validate that the weight is not empty and that's within range. If we got to that point, everything was not empty and was within range. All right. So we set this stuff up. And again, we probably don't even need these. I don't even think we need any of these, to be honest with you. I could have used the ones from up above. So I would have said first name here, et cetera, when I use these things. So I don't think we need any of these, but I'm going to leave them in there. All right, this is the way I wrote it, even as poor as I did write it. And I take blame for this if you think it sucks. So then we set up our string that's going to hold everything. First name, the last name, the height, the weight, the BMI, and the BMI status. Now the BMI we called right here. So that is going to pass height and weight, and it's going to call this routine right here. When you have an arrow function like this that is just returning a single line, you don't even need to use the curly braces. There is an implied word return here. You could put in the word return, but it's redundant. So what that does is it takes the weight, multiplies it by 703, and divides it by the height squared. Takes that total and stuffs it into the variable calculate, which I spelled wrong, calculate BMI. All right. And then we've got this other one here. It has one parameter. This had two whoops, sorry. This had two parameters. This has only one. This is pretty much straight JavaScript like from AWD1111. If it's less than 18.5, you're underweight. Otherwise, if it's less than 25, it already means you're over 18 or over, you're optimal. Otherwise, you're 25 or over, but if you're less than 30, you're overweight. Otherwise, you're obese. You return the status. That status that you return goes in there and gets written out here. And that's everything. Now, I have no idea if it'll work or not. Knowing me, I probably have some typos or something, but let's check. So I'm going to save it. Let's see. Looks like it's still running. So let's do a Control C down here. And let's start it up again. So npm run dev start. All right, it's running on port 8888. So I'm going to change my screen share for you and go out to the internet and go to a blank thing, do a localhost colon 8888, come in there. All right, with nothing in there. Okay, I'm getting cannot post star, so there's a mistake. That's not good. So I'm missing something. Let's just out of curiosity. Think I'm going to get the same error, but just so we know. All right, cannot post the slash. So I've got an error in here, and I think I already know what it is, but we're going to find out. Let me look at my app post statement. Slash BMI. All right, I'm getting an error, but it's 3:33 and it's going to take too long to debug this. So what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to run back over this program from the start. All right. And when I say this program, I mean just the app.js, and I will see if by tomorrow I can get that error fixed. All right. And then we're going to go on. We're driving down the road to where we're going to bring this. And, you know, if we're going in one direction with Node, and if MySQL is going in another direction, eventually we're going to come together. All right. So I'm sorry. Like I said, it's just.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Before you go, can you show me the if statement one more time for the very last
Sure
part? I didn't get it all.
That?
Can you switch your screen? No, can you show me the like the BMI status? Like, yeah, that right there. Thank you.
So tomorrow morning, or tomorrow afternoon, I'm sorry. Tomorrow afternoon when we start, I hope to have this debugged, and we will go through it, not for very long, and then we're just going to continue on. All right. I don't know how long the lecture will be tomorrow. I still have some prep to do for that. And Friday will be lab for the entire period. And I will be online for the entire period, but there'll be no lecture, of course, and no taping. You two watching, thank you for being here. Any other questions that either one of you have?
Questions?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Like I said, I'll figure out what the error is on this. My guess is whatever it is, it's simplistic. That's why it'll take me a while to find it. But we'll pick it up there tomorrow, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.